we have yeses in the comment section? Just check. Am I visible and audible all right? Please confirm. Yes? So a quick recap to begin with. In the last lecture, we had discussed what? We had discussed the transformation in Marxist writings from capitalism to communism. So according to Marx, it is inevitable that the capitalist society will collapse under its own weight and will be replaced by a communist society in the aftermath of a proletariat revolution. Various factors will ensure the downfall of the capitalist system, such as A, that there is an unresolvable fundamental conflict of interest between the two main classes, the bourgeois and the proletariat. These differences and these class antagonisms cannot be resolved within the framework of a capitalist society. Secondly, what was the second point? Yes, the contradiction between the social nature of production and the individual nature of ownership in capitalist society, right? Thirdly, various social processes taking place in capitalist society as it advances would further lead to the emergence of two-class consciousness, such as the obliteration of the differences in labor. As capitalism proceeds and technology advances, all workers will become equally de-skilled. It will lead to a de-skilling of labor, thereby contributing to a homogenization of the proletariat. Secondly, there would be a pauperization of the working class with the advancement of capitalism, meaning the rich-poor gap or the inequalities in society will widen, and the working class, the proletariat, will become poorer relative to the capitalist class. There would also, what would happen that as more and more workers start concentrating in bigger factories, it will facilitate communication between them, thereby also facilitating the emergence of a two-class consciousness. Also, the petty bourgeois will sink into the proletariat, thereby, its cushioning effect will be a thing of the past in the advanced stage of capitalism. So, with all these processes taking place, the working class will transform from a class in itself to a class for itself, meaning it will develop true class consciousness, which will replace the false class consciousness. The workers will now be able to realize the reality of their social situation. They will become aware of their own exploitation and oppression. They will become aware of their common class membership. They will recognize the common class enemy. They will recognize their class interests are the same, and then they will take collective class action to overthrow the class enemy, thereby destroying the capitalist system and in its place instituting a dictatorship of the proletariat. The dictatorship of the proletariat would be a kind of a transitional stage in the transformation of society from capitalist to communist type, during which some members of the working class will capture the state apparatus as well as the factories or the economic institutions in order to, on behalf of all members of the proletariat, they will ensure enhancement in productivity. At this stage, the productivity will be further enhanced, and secondly, the last vestiges of capitalism, its supporting superstructure, will be completely done away with. After which, the communist society will be established. It will be egalitarian or classless. There will be no alienation, no task specialization, which traps the individual in narrow roles. There will be no exploitation, no oppression, right? There will be no state, no money, no religion, etc. So this was Marxist theory, and after which we had undertaken an assessment of the writings of Marx. So we began with criticizing Marxist theory on various grounds, such as he overplays the role of economic factors and downplays the role of other factors. So he is accused of economic determinism. He is accused of ignoring the potential of the individual in affecting social life. He is also accused of being heavily value-laden while claiming to be scientific. His theory, it is argued, is not universally applicable, which he claimed it to be. His theory is accused of being outdated, given that the conditions which he was talking about may have existed during his own times, but they do not exist today. It is pointed out by critics that his many predictions did not come to pass. So capitalism has not fallen down. The working class is not a threatening force, right? In fact, it is far from it. It has developed a vested interest it has become a beneficiary of the capitalist system and the wealth generated by it, right? Various means have been devised to tackle alienation and so on and so forth. Finally, the collapse of the Soviet Union has vindicated the critics of Marx. So the Eastern Bloc, led by the erstwhile superpower USSR, collapsed under its own weight, not due to threats from the outside or any wars or machinations, right? So it was some inherent weakness in the Marxist framework, how it conceptualized organizing the economic and political life of the people, because of which it collapsed. Particularly in terms of the political aspects, it was seen as somewhat suffocating, not allowing free participation of all sections of the society. So that stifled the voice of the people, but not forever, and eventually it kind of ruptured in the form of a revolution which broke up the erstwhile USSR into several parts. Economically, it hollowed out the system because of the lack of incentive to work in the Marxist framework. So this is what we had discussed. After which we had also touched upon the continued relevance of Karl Marx in today's times. So it's been more than 200 years since the birth of Karl Marx, yet he continues to be hailed as one of the foremost thinkers of all times, foremost philosophers and writers of all times. In the discipline of sociology, his writings have highlighted the conflict oppression aspects of social life, which is a very much needed corrective to the emphasis on cooperation and harmony by the functionalist school which dominated sociology otherwise. Of course, the impact of Marxism outside of the narrow domains of sociology have been much wider, right? So, and much more impactful in the sense, it has transformed and actually affected the lives of millions of people, not only during the Cold War years, when many societies were organized on Marxist principles, but even afterwards, even after the seeming collapse of Marxism, or its evidence in the form of the collapse of USSR. Various working class movements and movements of other oppressed sections of the societies across the globe, they seek inspiration from the writings of Karl Marx. Wherever world capitalism seems to be in duress, it is again Marx's writings which seem to kind of ring true once again. So he did carry out a very incisive critique of the capitalist system, which does seem to hold true, many of its aspects seem to hold true, even to this date. Okay? Yes, he ignored the impact of the role of ideas. So this is all what we had covered. And with that, we had buried the ghost of Karl Marx so that we can move ahead in our lives and in our course. Now, very important Gyan here at this point. Lots of students, when you read or come across the views of Karl Marx, they do have that seductive capacity, right? So they do inspire, they do, to many of us, they seem very, very appealing, talking about equality and justice and oppression and ending it and so on. Apart from its appeal as a philosophy, right, it is undoubtedly important in the sociology paper 1 as well. It has its place of importance in our scheme of things, in the scheme of the examination, or in the sociology paper. But though it is very important, it is not the whole of your sociology syllabus. It is a portion of your UPSC sociology syllabus. Why I am reiterating this or underlining this, that please do not get so swayed away by Marxist writings that you devote disproportionately greater time to reading up on Marx or studying Marx than what is justified by the needs of the exam. For now, have a limited focus of wanting to clear the exam. Otherwise, a whole lifetime is also not sufficient to fully comprehend Karl Marx. Okay? So, and if you have any urge to read up, etc., hold it for later. And the internet, it is a very rich and wide resource, right? Knowledge bank. You can keep on clicking from one link to the next and delve deeper into any aspect of reality, say, Marxist writings. So avoid that temptation if you are having it and restrict your focus to the requirements of the exam for now. Once you become a bureaucrat and you're done with your training, there will be periods in life when you will have ample time to do all the catching up, reading up that you want to, for the love of it or for the curiosity, etc. For now, let us focus on the examination, which is our task at hand. Are you with me on this? Thank you. Right? So now let us move on to another thinker, perhaps not as celebrated as Karl Marx, but in the UPSC sociology scheme of things, perhaps equally important or quite important, namely, and another German scholar, namely Max Weber. Max Weber. Now this gentleman, this was his time period. Now, the fellow is a German, a very quick peek into his life history. So he was born in Prussia, or what we now call broadly Germany, and his father, right, he was a very wealthy and very publicly celebrated kind of a civil servant. He was also a prominent member of a leading political party of his time. Okay? Weber Senior was a very prominent and wealthy civil servant. His mother was a very devout and ascetic kind of a lady. Okay? Devout in the sense of religiously inclined. Ascetic meaning of a yogi type orientation, not a bhogi type orientation. Right? Ascetic meaning, you give up on the worldly pleasures and lead a very, very simple, basic kind of a life. In other words, friends, his mother and father were of very diametrically opposite kind of orientations. His father was very fond of earthly pleasures and materialistic things, while his mother, so his father was a bhogi, while the mother was of a very yogi kind of an orientation. Okay? And this used to lead to significant tensions in the Weber household. Okay? And in these, there used to be very heated arguments. Now, why do we need to know all this? In these heated arguments, where does Weber Jr. or our Max Weber, where does he fit in? Whose side would he take? Any guesses? All of us are mama's boys, and so was Max Weber, so he would increasingly side with his mother in the family quarrels between the parents. Because of which, his relationship with his father got increasingly strained. Okay? So be that as it may, as Weber grew up, he enrolled in a course for studying law. Okay? So in terms of his educational background, he was educated in the field of law. When he began his career, okay, he basically went into the teaching profession, and he became a professor of economics. His interests were varied, and he did not interestingly see himself as much of a sociologist. He instead fancied himself more as a historian. Okay? So he was interested in the fields of history, political science, sociology, economics, a very wide kind of and varied kind of academic interest and involvement. So he became a professor of economics, and midway through his career, sometime in 1890s, okay, so he had a very, very heated argument with who? With Daddy Dearest. Within 2 months of that argument, Daddy Dearest passed away. Okay, so, and that argument had remained unresolved. So after the death of his father, Max Weber went where? Into, any guesses? Yes, into depression. Right? So he became increasingly depressed, so much so that he had to pull back from his academic career. So he stopped teaching, stopped writing, stopped researching, tried to shift base, move from one city to another, and so on. And after several years, more than a decade, he was able to somewhat resume teaching, and that too sporadically. Okay, so this was one of the worst periods for him professionally and personally. Okay, and he was suffering from very severe mental illness. So that is what happened, and then he recovered from it eventually. So in terms of his public profile, he also dabbled in politics. So he joined a left-leaning political party, and he of course was a very prolific writer and became a reputed public intellectual. He also was a part of the committee which made suggestions to the drafting of the Weimar Constitution. Have you heard of the Weimar Constitution of Germany? It is famous, or should I say notorious? Why is it famous or notorious? It is by kind of perverting the provisions of the Weimar Constitution that Hitler was able to assume dictatorial powers. Okay? So those draconian emergency provisions, which also find some reflection in the Indian Constitution. So that is that. So as fate would have it, in 1920, Weber Sahab passed away. Thanks to what? Thanks to an illness which wiped off anywhere between 5 to 10% of the world's population. Different estimates put it differently. What was it? The Spanish flu, okay, or the Spanish influenza. Yeah, that was the original pandemic. If the Prime Minister mentions that the last pandemic, it's like a once in a century pandemic, it is this, the Spanish influenza, which literally swept away anywhere 5, 7, 10% of the world's population that one is referring to. So, that Weber also caught the Spanish flu and passed away. Now, this tension between his mother and father, or rather the orientation, the prolific and very materialistic orientation of his father, and the ascetic orientation of his mother, also reflects in his writings. Okay, one of the important topics we have to do is the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism. So his father, in a way, represented which of these two? He represented capitalism, okay, and his mother represented the Protestant ethic. And this has become one of the most seminal contributions of Weber to the sociology of religion. Coming to the UPSC syllabus, where does it mention Sri Weber, or what all topics are mentioned under Weber are as follows. You have social action. You have something called ideal type. Though you do not have it explicitly mentioned, we will also study something called Verstehen while discussing ideal type. Then there is this concept of authority. Then bureaucracy. And finally, the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism. This is our UPSC sociology syllabus under the heading of Max Weber. Beginning with, friends, his concept of, this guy also, incidentally, if it escapes mention, he was also a heavy drinker in college, if it interests you. Because I remember some of you commenting that is what is the source of all wisdom, apparently. That is not much of concern, and that is not the thing you should be taking inspiration from. Coming to the first topic, which is social action. What is social action, friends? Please appreciate. For Weber, friends, social action is the fundamental unit of analysis in sociology. In other words, sociology for Weber is the science or the study, systematic study of social action. So as a discipline, what do we study in sociology? We study social action. Now, when he's emphasizing on the study of social action, please appreciate Weber makes a very strong departure from the positivist methodology. The positivist approach, by and large, is unmindful of the individual. In stark contrast, Weber starts focusing on the individual level social action. What is social action? Please write down the definition. Social action, according to Weber, is the meaningful act which is oriented in its course. Which is oriented in its course. What does it mean? When we say it is a meaningful act, two basic components, that it is meaningful, it's a short definition, and that it is oriented. Let us try to appreciate the meaning of the two words. Meaningful means that the social actor attaches some subjective meaning to his own action. So it has not been numbly or mindlessly undertaken. There has been an application of thought, and the social actor has consciously, while attaching a meaning, he has performed that action. I repeat the definition. Social action, according to Weber, is the meaningful act which is oriented in its course. By meaningful, we mean that the social actor attaches meaning to his own action. It is not mindless or without any application of mind. Secondly, it is oriented in its course, meaning it is oriented towards who? It can only be oriented towards someone or something, right? Who is it oriented towards? Towards other members of the society. What do we mean by that? That it takes into account the behavior of others. It takes into account the behavior of others. So please appreciate, every action is not a social action. For example, this particular action of mine. Let me do something. I'm just thinking. That's my action. Is it a social action? What I just did? Let's just see if it satisfies these criteria. Is it meaningful? So when I'm waving, the waving of a hand, does the actor attach some meaning to this waving? Yes, of course. It means hello, hi, whatever. Is it oriented? Meaning, is it directed towards others? Of course it is, right? So I'm waving at you. So it is a social action. This action of teaching, right? Right now I'm speaking and you're listening. Is it a social action? It is also a social action. When the individual sleeps, he turns in his sleep. Is it a social action? No, it is not. A lot of these reflexive bodily movements that all of us make throughout the day. As we speak, we are blinking our eyes. Is that a social action? No. If you are riding a bicycle and you happen to bump into another bicycle, is that a social action? It is not. Why? Because the individual did not consciously carry it out. Okay? Yeah, yeah, in case you are in Amir Khan and the other cyclist is a Madhuri Dixit, in that case it may be somewhat of a conscious planned kind of a social action, but otherwise not. Okay? So social action are those actions which are meaningful. In other words, to which the social actor attaches subjective meaning, and they are oriented in their course, meaning they take into account the behavior of others. Now, Weber classifies social action into 4 types. Classifies social action into 4 types. First is what is called emotional or affectual. Affection, the root word being affection. Social action. Emotional or affectual, affective, whatever you may prefer, social action. This is a social action. Please write down. It is very simple and intuitive. A social action which is anchored in the emotional state of the actor. A social action which is anchored in the emotional state of the actor. Simply put, friends, when a social action is driven by some emotions, underlying emotions like love, hatred, anger, jealousy, then it is known as emotional or affective social action. For example, if a person starts shouting at another in a fit of rage, it is which type of social action? It is emotional or affective social action. If you meet after long years a long lost friend, and suddenly you bump into him and you are overwhelmed with emotion and you hug him tight, it is which type of social action? Yes, Bharat Milap was an emotional social action. Okay? So wherever you have the emotional state of the actor as the underlying basis, that is emotional social action. Second type, traditional social action. It is that social action, traditional social action, it is that social action which is guided by customary habits of thought. Customary habits of thought. In other words, friends, it is done in accordance with some long-held customs or traditions. Okay? Things we do as a matter of convention. For example, you have distant elderly relatives visiting your home every now and then, and you bow down and touch their feet. Do you do so overwhelmed by emotion? No. Why do you do it? That's how things have always been. It has been ingrained in our minds that when elderly relatives come visiting, we simply, so very kind of mechanically, as a matter of custom or habit, we would bow down and touch their feet. Third is Zweck rational social action. Zweck rational social action. What do you mean by Zweck rational? Come on, you don't even know this much elementary German. Zweck rational means, of course you're not expected to know. Zweck rational means formal rationality. Formal rationality or goal-oriented rational action. Goal-oriented rational action. What it means is, friends, that both the goals and the means are chosen rationally. Both the goal and the means to obtain that goal are chosen rationally. For example, most decisions in the realm of business in modern society, taken by businessmen, whether you want to open up a plant in X location or Y, whether you want to manufacture A product or B, and in how much quantity, these are which type? Zweck rational. Okay, so you have a clearly defined goal, which is also rational. What is the goal for the businessman? Profit maximization. Okay, and what is the best course to obtain that goal? Given the resources one has, that is how one takes business decisions. So you choose the means as well as the. So say you are a businessman, you can manufacture red shirts or white shirts. We are done with shirts. Okay, let's do something else. Any other business we can launch together? Say let's get into real estate. So whether you will build a building and you have X budget. Okay, you have 10 crore rupees. So whether you will open some construction project in Delhi or Gurgaon or Aligarh, how will you take that decision? So there will be a lot of cold calculations that in this much amount I will not get any substantive land in Delhi and Aligarh will be this or that, right? So possibly Faridabad is the best option. Or say many of you may have taken so many such decisions. You have an X amount to invest. Where would you invest it? In property or in shares or in bank FD? I'm not asking you for the decision. Okay, fine, I appreciate your. But the point is the process is what? Zweck rational. Now all of you are giving me investment advice. That is not what I seek. I'm just trying to highlight that such kind of social action is Zweck rational. Why? You have an end goal which is also rational, which is what? Maximizing your profit while maintaining the security of your investment to the extent possible, right? And then the means also chosen. Whether you choose to invest in FD or property, etc. Then cold calculations will, kind of cold rationality, mathematical logic will guide that decision making process. Okay. Fourth is what is called worth rational. worth rational. W-E-R-T, rational, worth rational. Also otherwise known as substantive rationality. Substantive rationality. Or value-oriented rational action. Value-oriented rational action. Here, friends, the goal in worth rational, the goal may not be rationally chosen. It may be determined by the values of the social actor. But the means chosen to obtain that goal are rational. Right? The goal may be determined by the values of the researcher, not by cold mathematical rationality or logic. But the means are, means to pursue that goal, they are clearly rational. For example, once we become a civil servant, okay, so say you are an IS officer posted high up in some ministry, taking important decisions, signing on important files, clearing projects worth crores. You will be visited by who? Money bags, meaning businessmen will come, try to secure a tender from you or a favor from you by buying you off, offering you money, right? But then, to uphold the values of integrity and probity in public life, you reject that bribe. Is that action rational or irrational? It is worth rational with relation to that end goal. Okay? It may be that particular path is rational or the means chosen are rational. So it is what Weber calls worth rational. So this is his typology or classification of social actions. Right? So that is about social actions. Let us take another example. You've chosen sociology as your optional subject, right? Which type of action was it? Or let me put it this way, a student Ram has chosen sociology option. I'm not talking about you. I'm saying a student Ram has chosen sociology option in the UPSC exam. Which type of action is it? Tell me. Most of you are suggesting it is very rational. An overwhelming majority of you are suggesting it is very rational. But please appreciate, friends, the type of action which it would be would depend on the orientation of the who? Of the social actor. Of Mr. Ram in this case. So why he has chosen a social actor? Who knows? Why he has chosen a particular option? Who knows it? The motivation, the meaning? Only Mr. Ram knows. How do you know? Okay? So the same social action may be classifiable as different types depending on what is the subjective meaning attached by the social actor. If Ram has chosen sociology driven by cold rationality, that my goal is to clear the civil services exam, and for that the best possible means, in the sense shortest syllabus, easy to understand, consistent performance and blah blah, so I go ahead with sociology. Then it is which type? Then it is very rational for sure. But if Ram is unsure about the subject he is going to opt for, so he reads a couple of fundamental books like NCERTs of a few subjects like sociology, and he's contemplating biology and public administration, and he falls in love with sociology, or he hears a lecture on Karl Marx and falls in love with the subject, and then he chooses sociology. Then it is which type? Then it is affective or emotional social action. But if Sham, another social actor, he also has chosen sociology, but because when his father appeared for the civil services exam, he had taken sociology, and his grandfather and great-grandfather had also opted for sociology, then it is traditional. Right? If another social actor, say Sita, she has taken up sociology because she wants to bring about effective social transformation by becoming a civil servant. Therefore, she wants a thorough grounding in her own close assessment and understanding of social life. She has the zeal of a social activist and wants to possibly improve the lives of women in society. Then it is which type? Worth rational. Okay? So the same social action may be of different types. Different social actors will attach different meaning, different orientation, different motives can be attributed. Therefore, it may be of different types depending on the subjective meaning attached by the social actor to that action. Another very good example, and if Sita takes sociology optional because Ram has taken it and she is in love with Ram, so she will get more time to study with Ram, then it is which type? Then it is emotional social action. Okay? So if you refuse the bribe because you want to uphold as a civil servant, because you want to uphold the values of probity, integrity in public life, it is worth rational. But if you refuse the bribe because you think nowadays the anti-corruption department is very vigilant, and for this paltry bribe of 50,000 or 1 lakh rupees, I might not end up behind the bars or losing my job, then it is which type? Then it is very rational. Okay? So now tell me, friends, this is about the theory, right? Now you tell me, for you as an individual, choosing sociology as an option was which type of social action? Most of you suggesting it was a Zweig rational social action. So let me ask you that. Was there no emotional input in that decision making? Was it devoid of any emotion? So point is, friends, why I'm raising this question is to make you realize that this is a model. Social reality is often much more complex, much more messy, and cannot be neatly classified into necessarily one of these categories. Right? So in the real social world, social action of a social actor, oftentimes it lies somewhere in between or in multiple such categories. Right? Having said that, okay, in modern industrial society, what is your assessment? Which type of social action dominates? Which of the four is the most dominant, most widely prevalent social action in modern industrial society? It is undoubtedly Zweig rational. So most actions in modern industrial society, they are Zweig rational. So there is this cold rationality which is applied to attain some clearly specified rational goals, right? And this is not your personal view or mine. This is also what Weber suggests, that in modern society, modern industrial society, Zweig rational, comes to dominate social life. And this increasing prevalence of Zweig rational type of social action is known as rationalization. So what is rationalization? Rationalization is a social process whereby, I repeat, rationalization is a process whereby Zweig rational social action increasingly dominates social life in modern industrial society. What do we mean by the term cold rationality? Meaning, devoid or without any emotion. Okay, cold logic is what you are applying. Almost a very mathematical and precise calculation of the costs and the benefits involved. That is cold rationality. Please write down a concluding para. According to Weber, sociology is a science of social action. Sociology is a science of social action. The discipline tries to arrive at a causal explanation of social action. Causal explanation. Causal explanation means trying to explain its causes and what led to it. What are the effects of those causes? To understand social action fully, the researcher must also develop an understanding To understand social action fully, the researcher must develop an understanding of the meanings and motives of the social actor. Okay? So not only do we have to study what is being done, we have to study why the actor is doing what he is doing. And that is where he makes a departure from positivism. Positivism will stop at understanding what is being done, not the why of it. Positivists are least concerned about the subjective meanings or motives of the actor, while Weber considers it to be an integral part of the social reality. Let us now delve deeper into this aspect. Okay. So how do we study social action? Let us try to appreciate. Let us now come to Weber's methodology. Weber's methodology, meaning how do we study social reality, the social world? There are three pillars of Weberian methodology, friends. Three broad parts of Weberian methodology. One is causal pluralism. The other is Wurst-Hahn. And the third is what is written here, ideal type. These are three important aspects of Weberian methodology. What do we mean by each of these? Let us try to appreciate. So in our UPSC syllabus, ideal type finds specific mention and these two do not. This we will still delve into at some length because it has been asked in UPSC paper in the past. Okay, so, and this we will make a quick reference to in passing. We are now trying to understand how do we study society according to Weber. What is the methodology of the discipline of sociology? How do we conduct research? Right? So let us try to appreciate using Weber's viewpoint on this issue. There are three important pillars of Weberian methodology: causal pluralism, Wurst-Hahn, and ideal type. Causal pluralism means what? Simply what the term suggests. According to Weber, friends, behind any social phenomenon, there are how many causative factors? One or multiple? Multiple. There is a plurality of causative factors at play. Now, why does this need to be said or stated? No, isn't it like self obvious? what Weber is suggesting with causal pluralism is that behind any social phenomena there are multiple causative factors. In other words, he is against monocausal explanations of social phenomena. There is not a single cause which can explain a social reality totally or in entirety. And this kind of theorizing stands in stark contrast to the other founding fathers of sociology. For example, Marx's theory, right? Marx's theory is broadly monocausal. Why? For him, what is the cause to explain anything? According to Marx, what is the cause or the explanation of any social phenomenon? It is the economic factors. So he explains everything, from religion to family to politics to education to ideology, as emanating from the economic base. So Marx's theory is accused of being monocausal. Similarly, Durkheim's theory was also somewhat narrow. For him, suicide rate is explained in terms of social integration and moral regulation. Weber, on the other hand, he acknowledges that behind any social phenomena, there are multiple causative factors. Now, one of Weber's most celebrated works is Protestant Ethics and the Spirit of Capitalism, in which he explains how the religious beliefs of the Protestants are a group of Christians, okay, a sect within Christianity, okay? So how the religious beliefs of the Protestants were a causative factor contributing to the development of modern industrial capitalism. Can Weber then be accused of giving a monocausal explanation? Isn't this also monocausal? No, please appreciate why Weber is much different from a Marx or a Durkheim. Because Weber acknowledges that, to make capitalism a social reality, there were multiple causative factors which were at play. However, it is my limitation as a researcher, as a human being, that I cannot get into, exploring so many dimensions of reality. Therefore, I, Max Weber, am exploring a limited aspect of this reality, which is how Protestant beliefs contributed to the emergence of modern capitalism. He does not deny, he categorically states, in fact, that there are multiple causes that have contributed to the development of modern capitalism. Okay? The researcher is tied by budget constraints, time constraints, practical limitations, that he cannot get into everything. So there are multiple things required for development of capitalism. You require a massive resource base of natural resources, long periods of peace. So there should be political stability and peace, a non-war kind of a situation. A good control over the river systems or irrigation channels. No, many things are there. Okay? The separation of work and family, many things contributed to the development of modern capitalism. But as a researcher, given the practical constraints, we are exploring only one dimension or one of the causative factors in some detail. But we are definitely not denying the significance or presence of the other causative factors. Okay? This is simply what is causal pluralism. Coming to Wurstern. What do we mean by Wurstern? Again, you don't know elementary German. The word Wurstern literally means to understand. So what do we have to understand? Let us try to appreciate. What are we trying to study? What is the basic unit of social life in Weberian writings? It is social action. Now, how do we study social action? There are two aspects to developing this understanding using the Weberian method of Wurstern. So say there is this phenomenon. What? That this social actor choosing sociology option. Or another social actor eating a meal. It could be any social action. Okay? Or a third social actor dancing in the rain. Now, you have to understand or make sense of this social action. The first thing that you will do is what? Direct observational understanding. Direct observational understanding. Simply put, you will observe what is happening, what is the social action being performed, and you will note it down. You will be able to derive some sense or some aspect of that social reality by simply directly observing the phenomena. For example, if a social actor, say a family member, is shouting at you, making a stern face, is there any understanding that you can acquire by simply observing that social actor shouting at you? Say a parent or a sibling. What can you infer? Or what will you gather? That they are in which state? They are angry. Simply. So from his facial expressions, from the tone of his voice, you will be able to gather from the way he looks at you that he is angry. This is the first level of understanding. Direct observational understanding. But that is not a complete understanding of the social reality. To understand the social action fully, please appreciate an integral part of the social reality is what? The subjective meaning which the social actor has attached to that social action. Right? The positivist stops at this stage by direct observation, whatever he is able to gather from the surface, and he is content with it. Weber criticizes positivism on this ground. He says, we study human beings. Human beings necessarily have consciousness, they attach meaning and motives. There are underlying motives behind any social action. So simply, if you look at three shouting persons, then to conclude the same thing by this direct observation would be an incomplete understanding of reality. Why? Each person may be shouting because they attach different meaning to that shouting or to that eating of food, or any other example. So what do you have to do? Now this is called Actualswurstern. This stage is called Actualswurstern. which is direct observational understanding. Now, to understand the subjective meaning attached by the actor, what do? How will you understand in any social situation? Say I am teaching. Let us take this situation. I am teaching. This much you can gather through direct observation. But then comes the question, why am I teaching? What is the meaning, the motive attached by this social actor to his action of teaching? How can you figure it out? That's something in my head. Okay, so some of you are suggesting you can ask me, why do you teach? Yes, you can. But then, quite likely, oftentimes, the social actor may lie. He may not give you truthful responses. So, say my motive is to earn loads of money and become a billionaire. But that does not behove me to say as a teacher. So I may lie to you. You will investigate. Yes, how will you investigate? You will. But how? For that, you will have to put yourself in my shoes. Please appreciate what Weber terms as empathetic listening. Empathetic listening, or it is also called as explanatory understanding. This was direct observational understanding. Now we are getting to the explanation of it, or explanatory understanding. What do we? Let us try to appreciate these words. So, empathy means what? See, empathy is different slightly from sympathy. When you sympathize with someone, you somewhat pity them. Okay, you consider them like, poor soul. Huh? So you, from your position of advantage or privilege, you look down upon somebody, oh, poor fellow, he doesn't have money to eat, so let me just give him some, charity. That is sympathy. Here you have empathy. Empathy meaning you can feel what the other person feels. So if you have yourself, slept hungry for several nights due to lack of money, you will empathize with the thief who steals your money to purchase bread. So you can feel the other person's pain, okay, or what he is going through. That is empathy. Listening means what? Listening means to establish a connection. Okay. So empathetic listening involves that the researcher places himself imaginatively into the shoes of the social actor in order to interpret the subjective meaning attached by the actor to his actions. So from whatever you have gained from direct observation and some preliminary investigation about me, you will then put yourself in my shoes, or the guy who is dancing in the rain. Okay, so if I was this middle class, city-based teacher belonging to XYZ caste of near about this age group, why would I teach? That is what you have to figure out. So you literally have to get into my head. You, meaning the researcher, needs to get into the head of the researched or the social actor. He has to feel what the actor feels. He has to think what the actor thinks. Are you with me on this? Yes, you literally have to hack into my mind. Very well put. Explanatory understanding, or what is termed as Erklärende Verstehen. Erklärende Verstehen. Erklärende. It is German, so there's no escaping that. Erklärende Verstehen, or explanatory understanding. The researcher should imaginatively place himself in the shoes of the social actor. He must try to interpret the subjective meaning that the actor attaches to his actions. He should try to understand what makes the social actor. He must try to understand what makes the social actor do a particular thing in a particular situation. In other words, friends, the researcher should not contend with only observing what is directly observable. He must delve deeper into literally the mind of the researched, the social actor. That is why the discipline of sociology cannot be completely separated from the related discipline of which discipline, according to Weber? Psychology or psychology. Okay? So that is first one. He has to not only understand what is happening, but why is the actor doing what he is doing, for which you need to get into the mind of the social actor. Okay? TK, for those who do not understand Hindi, TK is just a very generic catchphrase, which means, is it alright? Okay, for my friends from non-Hindi speaking states. Moving on to ideal type. Ideal type. What do you mean by the word ideal? In English, normal English, what do you mean by ideal? Perfect, utopian, most suitable, best possible. It's like, it means something like, worthy of emulation, right? Perfect or near perfect, and therefore worthy of emulation, right? In the literal English sense. When we say that Lord Ram was the ideal son, or Sita was the ideal wife, and that is what we should strive to be. or that Shravan Kumar was the ideal son. It means, something so near perfect that it is worthy of emulation. This is not that. Please appreciate, this is not that. It is not ideal in that sense of the term. Okay, here Weber has a very definitive and different meaning of the word ideal. What is ideal type? Ideal types, please appreciate to begin with. So this is what it is not. We are studying what we are studying, social action. And to study it fully, we must also delve into, or we must also interpret or understand the subjective meaning attached by the social actor, underlying that social action. Now, in the society, how many social actors are there? Very large number of social actors are there, no doubt. Each social actor undertakes how many social actions in a day? Each social actor, each of us undertakes multiple social actions every day of our lives. Now, I as an individual researcher, if I start getting into the mind of each and every one of those to interpret the meaning that they attach to each of their social actions, what will happen to me? Yes, I will go mad. Right? It will be crazy because social reality is so vast, so complex, so varied. It is not easily comprehensible. And that is what happened to Weber, right? He did go through a mental illness, not making light of it. But point is that and Weber writes categorically that social reality is vast, unorganized, and chaotic. So much so, it is essentially incomprehensible. It cannot be understood. It is beyond comprehension. So what do? Do we hang our sociologist boots and sit down doing nothing? No, we don't do that. We have to somehow try to organize this maddening social reality into a more manageable kind of, concepts through which we can understand it. So we have to somehow make sense of this maddening world and the very vast, unorganized and chaotic, complex social reality which makes it. For that, towards that end, Weber proposes the use of ideal types. How do we make sense of the world, of this chaotic social reality? By constructing ideal types. In other words, we will be simplifying, organizing the social world in terms of certain concepts. What is ideal type? Let us see. It is nothing but simply a model of social reality. It is a model. Now, what is a model? What is a model? Again, I'm not getting into those perfect models like Millen Soman or what's a model? Very good. A model is a prototype or a representation. Yeah. So model is basically depicting the reality in, should I say, a simplified manner. No, it is not perfect, for God's sake. The model is not a perfect depiction. Okay, it is a simplified version of the reality. For example, let us create a model. Okay, ideal type is nothing new really. Okay, models have been used by scientists, social scientists, various academicians, researchers, students since ages. Okay, he's only started calling it ideal type and given it some definitive significance in social sciences. For example, let us develop a model of the solar system. Have you developed a model of the solar system in childhood or any other? Windmill, solar system. Some models you may have developed of a volcano, right? Those models. Now let us. So we will place the sun here. Okay, and then we will. So what kind of objects will you use in this model? It's a 3D model. Okay, for the sun, the Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and so on and so forth. What kind of objects will you use? You will use possibly balls. Why balls? Because they, like planets, are spherical in shape. What color balls will you use? For the sun, which color ball will you use? A red or a yellow or a glowing orange kind of a ball. For the Earth, which ball will you use? What color ball? For the Earth, blue. Right? It is known as the blue planet, and so on. Right? I don't know the colors of other planets, but sixth grader would tell you better possibly. Mars would be red, and so on. What about the size of the balls? Which of these balls would be the largest? Yes, for the more educated ones, they are saying it correctly. The sun, not Jupiter. The sun, right, would be the largest ball, followed by Jupiter and so on. Which ball would you depict with certain ring kind formations? Saturn, and so on and so forth. This is how you will create and you will put them in elliptical paths and so on and so forth. This is a very rough and ready 6th graders model of solar system. Or should we say in Weber's terminology, an ideal type of the solar system. Now, let us graduate to a higher level. Let us develop a model of, or an ideal type of a social reality. Say, democracy. So let us quickly make a model of democracy. What all will you include in this model? What all features will you depict? Tell me. Tell me some salient features of democracy which we can depict through this model. Okay, so regular, free and fair elections. What else? A legislative body like parliament to make laws. Universal adult suffrage. A constitution or constitutional government or limited government, right? Ideals of liberty, equality and fraternity. An independent judiciary. A vibrant civil society. A free press. Various freedoms, such as freedom of speech and expression, of organizing, and so on and so forth. Okay? So this is our rough and ready model of democracy. Or one can term it an ideal type of democracy. Okay? So this is exactly what an ideal type is. It is a model of social reality which captures, now tell me friends, when we have made this model of the solar system, okay, there is our solar system, say here is our quick and ready solar system, okay, or this model of democracy, firstly, does it represent the actual reality? In other words, is the solar system anywhere near this? Or it is vastly different and way more complex? So this is not how the solar system looks. It is a gross oversimplification. Secondly, tell me friends, when we have developed this model of the solar system or democracy, does it capture all the aspects of this complex reality? Far from it. In fact, one may contend that most aspects of reality are kept out of it, and we have selected only few or certain elements of the reality and use them to construct our ideal type. So friends, it is important to remember that the ideal type is not an exact replica of the social reality. It does not reproduce the social reality. It is an oversimplified model of the reality which it is trying to capture. Only certain elements or few elements of the reality, which in itself is way more complex. Only few elements of that complex and chaotic reality are selected and depicted here. Hello, am I audible and visible? Please confirm. Yes, I am. Thank you. So point is, friends, an ideal type is a model of the social reality which captures certain aspects, not the whole of reality. It captures certain aspects of the reality. Please write down. Ideal type. An ideal type. Okay, I'll give you like half a minute to wrap up if you're writing something that has been discussed, and then I will start dictating. Why is it called ideal type? If it is not ideal in the sense of Shravan Kumar or Lord Shri Ram, why is it called ideal? How does the researcher create the ideal type? Using his ideas, and that is why it is called an ideal type. Okay? Please note down. An ideal type is a model of social reality. It is a model of social reality developed by the researcher, using his ideas. Full stop. An ideal type does not capture all aspects of the social reality. Full stop. The researcher selects only some aspects of the phenomena under study and highlights them. Highlights in the sense they are brought out in relief, right? So say in the model of the solar system, we have selected some aspects of reality, such as their color, their relative size, right? The order of the planets from the sun, and we have tried to highlight them or depict them through this model. So, before I'm dictating, I'm again explaining something. Please appreciate, in an ideal type, do we depict reality as it is, or by exaggerating its features? By exaggerating. Okay? How we exaggerate, please appreciate. We consider things in its extreme. So is the Earth, in our model of the solar system, or in reality, is the Earth total blue, like that ball? No. But we take it to be pure blue, and so on and so forth. Is it spherical in shape? No. But we depict it as a proper sphere, perfect sphere. In our model of democracy, are the elections really regular and free and fair completely? No. One may argue there is use of money power and muscle power. So the reality is quite different, complex and messy. But none of you suggested, sir, how can you have free and fair elections? Right? Because we are developing a model of democracy. And in that model of democracy, we take things in a kind of a pure and extreme type. Likewise, I said, free press. Is the press really free? You often nowadays hear accusations of Godi media and this or that, Darbari media. Right? So the press is arguably in connivance with the, literally slavishly sucking up to the political masters. Yet you do not point fingers at this model when we say free press. We assume it to be completely free. Right? So that is how we develop models. Okay? That is why an ideal type is pure. It is pure type. We don't say that, the press is somewhat free. We say free press. We don't say, somewhat managed elections. We say free and fair elections. So, we take things or certain elements and we exaggerate them. We depict them in their pure form. While in social reality, it is often much more complex and messy. So tell me friends, do you find this kind of a solar system anywhere in the universe? This particular, something exactly like this, made up of cardboard pieces of, on a 6-inch base and so on and so forth. Made up of spherical balls? Absolutely not. Such a solar system does not exist. Likewise, does such a democracy exist? No, it doesn't. The social reality is much more complex, varied and messy. These are oversimplified models of those realities that we are studying. So they are nowhere to be found in the empirical reality. Please note down. The ideal type is a pure type. Full stop. In empirical reality, the social phenomena captured using the ideal type may be quite different. Thus, the ideal type is it real or fictional? Is it real or is it fictional? The ideal type is fictional in character. Next paragraph. The ideal type is more like a caricature than a photograph. It is more like a caricature than a photograph. Caricature means a cartoon. It is more like a caricature than a photograph. What we are trying to say in a caricature, friends, when if you've seen a cartoon of say anybody, right, you pick some features and you exaggerate them. You don't depict the person as it is. Say if you have to depict a caricature of Sonia Gandhi, how she would be depicted? A very long nose, long and pointed nose, right? Or whatever. It's not a good Sonia Gandhi. And you know, with this kind of a puffed hair and a small frame, you know, a huge pardon to all Gandhi fans. But in contrast, if you pick up a picture of Sonia Gandhi, whom does the real Sonia Gandhi look more like the picture or the caricature? You bet like the picture, right? So the picture is closer to the real Sonia Gandhi than the caricature. Yet, why do we sometimes use caricature? Apart from the fact that it, you know, induces a laugh. So the idea is that you select some aspects of that complex phenomena called Sonia Gandhi, like a pointed nose or a coiffed hair, and you focus on that. The idea is to get the message across that, friends, this is Sonia Gandhi. Likewise, in the ideal type, we are not trying to develop a photograph or an exact replica of the social phenomena under study, say democracy or bureaucracy or whatever. We are picking up some aspects, highlighting them, or elongating Sonia Gandhi caricature's nose in order to make a point. So please note down, the ideal type is more akin to a caricature than a photograph. The ideal type is a mental construct developed for the systematic characterization of a concrete situation. Tell me, friends, if we are saying they do not depict social reality, then can we say they are completely divorced from social reality? They have got nothing to do with the social reality. Will that be a correct statement to make? Absolutely not. Okay, so please appreciate this nuanced position. We are saying that the ideal type does not capture the reality as it is. It is not a faithful representation or reproduction of the social reality, but it does not mean it is completely divorced from the social reality. The ideal type is developed only after a very careful examination of the social reality. Imagine yourself as a cartoonist. Can you make a Sonia Gandhi cartoon without being very, intricately acquainted with her physical appearance or features? You can't. You will observe her very closely so that you can develop that cartoon which does not correspond to her exactly. So to develop a model also, we need to be very thoroughly acquainted with. We need to investigate the social reality. Likewise, to develop a model of democracy, you cannot do it without studying democracy. Though the model that you develop will not be an exact replica of the real world democracy. Are you with me on this? Or has it gone over your head? I'm assuming that you're all with me. Let me reiterate. One thing I said is the ideal type does not capture the reality as it is. It rather selects some features, does not represent the whole complex phenomena, and they are presented in their pure form or exaggerated form. So the model which we develop for the ideal type, you will not find such a thing in the real world. It's like a caricature or a cartoon. Having said that, we then go on to assert that the ideal type is not completely divorced from reality. Only after a very careful and thorough examination of the reality can we develop the ideal type. Please write down. Ideal types are concepts developed by or developed on the basis of facts that are collected carefully during empirical research. To construct an ideal type, the researcher selects a certain number of traits of the whole, WHOL, of the whole. Ideal types only capture the essential characteristics, and not the totality of reality. Friends, tell me, if these ideal types do not faithfully reproduce reality, what good are they? Why the hell do we develop models or construct models when the reality is much different? Why do we develop a model of democracy or of the solar system? What purpose does it serve? Very good. Most of you are in the right direction. Basically, appreciate, friends, that the ideal type, what is the purpose? What is the utility? That it is a methodological tool. We are not trying to reproduce reality, right? We are using it for the purposes of research. It is a methodological tool. Please note down. Next paragraph. Give the heading the purpose of ideal types, of developing ideal types. Ideal types are a methodological tool which help the researcher to carry out his research. It helps the sociologist. To understand and analyze social reality. It helps the researcher. It helps the sociologist or the researcher to scrutinize, classify, and define the social reality without subjective biases. So the researcher's own values are kept aside while developing the ideal type. Please appreciate. It has got nothing to do with the values of the researcher. Now we have developed a model of democracy. Let's get rid of Sonia Gandhi ji and say we have developed a model of democracy. No real world democracy corresponds to this, but still this model can be used. For what purpose? What kind of research can we carry out using this ideal type or model of democracy? Which type of research will you carry out? Think logically. I know you have not studied this. Absolutely, so many of you got it correct. You will undertake a comparative analysis using this model. So you developed a model of democracy using which you can compare the real world democracy. So you can compare Indian democracy with American democracy with Pakistani democracy and contend that the press is 90% free in America, 70% free in India and 30% free in Pakistan. Or the elections are regular, free and fair to this extent in America, Y extent in India and Z extent in Pakistan. So it helps us to undertake a comparative analysis. Please note down. The ideal type as a research tool helps or facilitates or is useful for classification and comparison. Ideal types help us or the researcher in analyzing the empirical reality. Ideal types also help in removing doubts or vagueness. So, oftentimes, and Weber has written about it, social scientists use so many concepts which are ill-defined or which are vague. For example, the word family. So much research has been conducted on family. And there is no clear agreement or definition amongst the researchers on what family is, what unit are we talking about. So if we are able to develop an ideal type or model of family, then we know what we are talking about. So Weber did that throughout his works. He developed an ideal type of bureaucracy, an ideal type of the Protestant ethic, ideal type of capitalism. Like we just developed an ideal type of democracy. Right? So it helps to remove ambiguity and thereby develop clarity in the concepts used. So they help in comparative analysis, they guide in empirical research, they help to remove ambiguity in concepts and facilitate a systematic analysis of social reality. Are you with me on this? Only the name is fancy, friends. Any ideal type which we have already studied? Developed by Weber? Any ideal type developed by Weber which we have already studied? Give me examples. So he developed ideal types of social action. So these Weck rational, worth rational, traditional and affective, these are what? These are ideal types or models. The actual social reality, as we discussed, is much more messy and complex. But he created a model, a classificatory scheme of social actions. Any ideal type we have discussed, developed by other scholars like Durkheim. So many ideal types. Basically, these are concepts which help to bring clarity. All this mumbo jumbo, fanciful words to refer to the good old concepts or models. These are all ideal types. So egoistic suicide, altruistic suicide, these are what? These are ideal types. When he is defining religion, he is developing an ideal type. Furthermore, as we proceed, we will be discussing his views on bureaucracy Weber's. That will be an ideal type. Okay. So throughout in the academic world, we are using ideal types or models or concepts. Okay. That is simply ideal types. So with that, what do? Now that is a dilemma, but we take a break. After which, no, we don't call it a day. We take a break. I might return sooner from the break depending on my energy levels and how much time it takes me to recharge. But we return and then we proceed. Okay. So be prepared.